Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario. It's been a few days, but earlier this week on May 10th, 2020, both the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita got brand new system updates. We can see right here that 4.89 is the latest system update on the PlayStation 3, as well as 3.74 on the Vita. Now, we typically do see updates about once or twice a year on the PS3, but the Vita has not gotten an update in like 2.5 years, something like that. Now, this happened again on both the PlayStation 3 and the Vita, and the big thing about this is that this is not just a standard update just saying it improved system stability or just updating something minor. It actually did something quite a bit bigger on both consoles. We're over here at the system update page, and if we check the system software features, at least for PS3, check this out. Signing into PlayStation Network now requires a device password for enhanced account protection. Account creation for PlayStation Network and some account management features are no longer available on the console. Use your PC or mobile browser to use account management features with improved performance, safety, and speed. Well, I mixed those two up at the end, but still the same message. And even if we check this out for the PlayStation Vita and PlayStation TV or Vita TV, it is the same thing right here, but of course on version 3.74. Now, I'm making this quick video because I did want to not only announce this, talk about it a little bit, and also hopefully answer some questions that some people might have, especially people who either have a modified PS3 or Vita or are looking to modify their system. Well, first of all, if you have a PS3 like so and you have not modded it yet, you will need to wait for PS3Xploit to update their tools. Even at this time on the website, they are saying to not update to firmware 4.89 and that they are working on a HFW 4.89 right here. So at this point, it's more just going to be waiting for 4.89 HFW, PS3 HEN to be updated, as well as BG toolset to be updated. Now, BG toolset is for a full custom firmware, but that will not receive an update until there is at least one PS3 custom firmware out in the wild for 4.89. which I do know that EvilNat is working on that. It's also worth noting I do have videos covering these procedures here, but if the process is going to be the same across these, what I'm going to do is kind of what I've said and even what I've done once before. I'm just going to go in and edit the title and the metadata and such for the videos here. So for example, for using BG toolset or PS3 toolset for jailbreaking on firmware 4.88, if the process is the exact same on firmware 4.89, just using a 4.89 patch and 4.89 custom firmware, this video here is just going to stay the same. I'm not going to upload a new video, it'll just be edited here, and I know that's worked well before. And it's the exact same thing with PS3 HEN. Right here, if the process is going to be the exact same for 4.89, the previous video will just have its metadata and such updated to reflect that. Now, what about people who have a modified PlayStation 3? Well, if you have a PS3 running full custom firmware and you are wanting to update your custom firmware once a 4.89 custom firmware is available, you can follow the tutorial here, and all these videos are going to be linked down below in the description showing how to update custom firmware on a jailbroken PlayStation 3. And of course, if you have PS3 HEN and you're wanting to update that when the time comes, if you're wanting to get back online or just be on the latest update for giggles here, I do have a video showing how to update HFW and PS3 HEN respectively, which this will still apply once the new updates are out. It is really worth saying I do want to give a big shout out and thank you to the PlayStation 3 Exploit Team. I mean, I've covered their endeavors for a while. They are a really great group of folks here, and on top of that, they are really holding the PS3 scene up quite a bit as well too, with keeping their site up here, keeping their tools updated and accessible and all of that. It's just really cool how we have PS3 HEN that works on all consoles, and we don't have to use a hardware flasher in order to modify our systems with custom firmware at this point. We can do it pretty easily all through the BG toolset or PS3 toolset. So as I always say and recommend with the PS3Xploit Team, if you do like their work, I would always recommend donating to them. Even thinking about it in the way of, as opposed to having to buy a hardware flasher or pay for a server service to do this, you can take some of that money or even the money that you would have spent and contribute it to the PS3 Exploit Team. Now, I'm not a part of the team. I do just like what they do quite a bit, and I do want to support them in that way. And I do want to just say that, yes, even though this is freely available, this is not free to maintain and keep up and running. So if you like what they do, show your thanks in that way. Now, as for the PlayStation Vita, check this out. Luckily, nothing changed here in the kernel, and h-encore² actually works just fine and has survived several recent updates. It survived several patch updates, surprisingly, at this point here. So the good news is that Final HE has been updated pretty recently, and therefore, if you have a PlayStation Vita that you're trying to mod and it's on firmware 3.74, you can actually follow along with my previous video covering how to easily install HENkaku with Vita deploy up to the latest firmware right now on firmware 3.74. So you can get all your fun stuff going, downgraded, and everything there just fine. Let's say you already have a modified PlayStation Vita, and because of this update you can't get back online. Well, it's pretty simple to do that as well too. You can simply spoof your firmware version in the HENkaku settings and then restart your console, and you should be able to get back online. And lastly, if you have spoofed to the latest firmware on your PlayStation Vita and you are still not able to get back online, well, if you're running firmware 3.60 or 3.65 with HENkaku, I do also have another video showing how to install ITLS Enzo and, well, get your system back online properly there. Again, all of these videos are going to be linked down below in the description, so really just take your pick over what you are looking for, and hopefully you should be able to find your way from there. Now, thankfully, it looks like the PS Vita side of house seems to be covered pretty well, but for the PS3 side of things, I will be sure to keep you all updated over on the community tab on my channel here, much like I've done for the PS3 Vita and right now the Vita. So we're really just waiting on the PS3 side of things to get updated. Now, I also did want to talk about this a little bit as well too, as to why I think these changes are made, and even discuss this. I did want to get the modding stuff out of the way first, but if you're interested in listening to this part, I mean, that's great as well too. Well, first of all, it does make things much harder, as I have said, if you are signing into PSN. I guess it'd be unfair to say much harder, it's just a little more inconvenient because you cannot create a PSN account on the PS3 or Vita anymore. You cannot use your password, you have to use a device password, and you really have to have an account with two-factor authentication on there at that point. And finally, some account management features have been disabled on the Vita and the PS3. So it's a bit harder and a bit more of a challenge to get onto PlayStation Network, even for completely stock users. And I do believe it has a little bit something to do with this. I do believe, honestly, that this is a bit of a way to de-incentivize people from using these older consoles on PlayStation Network, so therefore it would be easier to sunset them in the future. Do remember that it was just about a year ago that Sony was seriously considering shutting down purchases for the PlayStation Store on the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita, but due to a whole lot of outcry, they quickly reversed that decision. Although it's not going to be a permanent decision. They just said really at the time, hey, we're not going to be shutting them down now. Sorry about that. But it is eventually going to come, and I do believe this is a step towards making that sunsetting a little bit easier to swallow. Now, I do want to highlight the PS3 here real quick because, as I said, this gets 1 or 2 updates per year typically, and this typically has to do with renewing the AACS encryption keys. Now, just looking at the page here in regards to this, it's stating that this is a copyright protection technology that is used on Blu-ray movies. The copyrighted content is protected by setting an encryption key on both the disc and the device used to play the disc. Now, this is important here. An AACS encryption key expires in 12 to 18 months and must be renewed. There may also be other times when the key has to be renewed. And this here is important. You see, unlike other Blu-ray players and such, the PlayStation 3 has to have these keys renewed, well, manually here, and that is done through a firmware update. So if you try to put in a Blu-ray movie in your PS3 and it doesn't work, that typically means you have to update the firmware, and these keys do have to be updated. So that's why these updates still come out, and that's why the last few updates we've seen on the PS3, there hasn't been any notable big changes. It's really just been updating these encryption keys. The point here is I'm not sure if or when we'll get another PS Vita system update, but in regards to the PlayStation 3, we will continue to see updates for it as long as Sony chooses to continue to support the Blu-ray playback on there. If they come out one day and say we're no longer supporting Blu-ray movie playback on the PS3, it's probably safe to say at that point it would not get any further system updates. But will that happen? I'm not sure. I'm going to kind of be more of a doomer here and say yes, it will eventually happen, but I just don't know when. However, this is not strictly limited to de-incentivizing people from using these systems or even just encryption. There's actually a pretty big security change here as well too, and I do want to highlight this comment here made by PlayStation HENkaku. I'm just going to read it as is. I'm in the PSN cracking scene a little bit. Ever since I made that color changing tool for PS4, people keep asking me to make tools to brute force passwords. I always refuse, sometimes hilariously sharing their tricks they use to do it, asking me to fix it for them or something. The current trick to brute force passwords is to use the PS3 and PSP requests to bypass all CAPTCHA and all rate limits, etc. By forcing everyone to use device passwords, they can effectively break this method right here, as even the correct password will not be accepted. The password reset function was also being abused to determine the date of birth of any PlayStation Network account. You can just brute force it, which is a security question required to initiate a password reset. The account were also used by spam botters to bypass CAPTCHA in creating an account that message you porn and shit. You've probably seen this before. Sony has just closed all of these tricks with this change. This is actually a good update, to be honest, although an edit here says, unfortunately, the DOB password reset trick is still possible even on 3.74. Come on, Sony. So when we take that into account with the PlayStation Network change, as well as even looking at the HackerOne page, I do know this isn't really relevant for the Vita and PS3, but I'll actually even highlight it here as well too. If we come down here and check out the scope of this, if we come down to out of scope, it shows PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, PlayStation Vita, and PSP or any other hardware. So really, PlayStation Vita and before, if you find any exploits on those systems, it's not going to be something that is really covered here through HackerOne, which is where people are able to disclose exploits for, well, the PlayStation 5, the PlayStation 4, and PlayStation Network. And depending on the severity of the exploit, you can get paid a little bit or a whole lot of money. Now, this is important right here because even though the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita, this is what I'm gathering, even though these are out of scope for the bug bounty program, PlayStation Network is still a thing here. This is still something that Sony does care about. It is currently used all the time. It is fully supported on the PS5 and PS4, of course, but also it's used on the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita, despite them being out of scope. What I'm saying here is it makes a whole lot of sense to me that we haven't seen really that much of a push to patch up these exploits themselves for these consoles, such as the PlayStation 3. However, anything that is going to impact PlayStation Network and exploit that is going to be fixed up, even if it requires making a change to the PlayStation 3 or PlayStation Vita. Because like I cited from that Reddit comment, the PlayStation 3 can be used as an attack vector of sorts for PlayStation Network accounts. And those accounts, even if they're really not cared for that much on the PS3 and Vita, they are still accessible on the PS4 and PS5. So that means that even people, let's say you're a person who your first PlayStation is a PS5 and that is the only PlayStation that you use and you get online, you can use that account all the way back on a PlayStation 3, a console from 2006. And that means that your account can be compromised and can be impacted if there is a big exploit on the PlayStation 3 or the PlayStation Vita in regards to PlayStation Network account access. So I suppose kind of wrapping this up here, this update actually does make a whole lot of sense to me. They're doing a good job protecting PlayStation Network accounts a little bit further from being exploited on these older consoles, but they aren't doing any maintenance on the consoles themselves, so to speak, and that's completely in line with what I've observed. They do care about PlayStation Network, like getting on here and such, but they don't really care about the PlayStation 3 and Vita as consoles themselves in any way, which is why, well, we still have, well, once this is, updated and patched and such, We still have access to PlayStation 3 HEN, the BG toolset, as well as, h-encore² working on the Vita. So overall, I mean, this is kind of a weird thing I'm about to say here, but even if you're into modding on these systems, this is a good update. Yes, tools do need to be updated, methods need to be updated and such a little bit here to accommodate to the newer updates, but in regards to actual account safety, this is a good update. So that works out. Didn't really think I'd be saying that here from the beginning, but kind of just what I've researched here. That's what it's led me to believe. Anyways, that is about it for this video here. I did trail on a little bit, but I kind of wanted to cover everything on this. And let me know what your thoughts are on this as well too. If you have made it here to the end, and if you think I sound correct on this, or maybe I got something completely wrong, or maybe you have a little bit of something to add as well too. Could it be Sony just doing regular maintenance to kind of do a little bit of a minimal thing? Yes. Is it a way to de-incentivize us from using PlayStation Network overall? Yes. Is it a big change here that is to protect PlayStation Network accounts a bit further? Also yes. But is it some way to completely eliminate the modding community and such on here? So far, I honestly haven't seen that much of an effort. I've seen as much of an effort as I've seen in previous updates, which is not all too much. Anyways, that's about it for this video. This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well, too.
I could take you far from it. Your memory can always be deceiving, you gotta trust me. And you saved my life more than a couple times. I just need a sign, yeah. With the light of the sky in your eyes. Yeah, you know you're the light of my life.